So I thought, okay, I need to talk to them directly. Maybe there are, so many ideas come their way. If I go and talk to them, they will see the light of day, and we'll take this program and we'll start to develop it for heart attack, something that mattered a great deal to me and my family, for example, but I'm sure to many others as well. So over the years, I got to know a lot of people in pharma, and I actually got meetings for all the big companies and actually at high management levels. And here what it told me. Protein kinase C is absolutely something that we're not going to go after. At that point, they had maybe 15 clinical studies in various regulators of protein kinase C that killed a lot of animals. It didn't matter to them that our drug is not killing any animal and it's not targeting the catalytic site as their drugs did, but actually affecting allosterically the enzyme. Then they said, cardiac ischemia or reperfusion, this damage to the heart that occurs when you bring back the blood flow and the oxygen, is not a real, there is no injury like that. And the reason for that is that the head of the International Society of Heart Research wrote this paper, Protein kinase C, a spectator in cardiac protection and reperfusion injury does not exist. And it had to do with the kind of tools that they use, and that's why the claim was like that. Then the drug was a peptide. Now peptides become more and more popular, absolutely not an option in early 1990s, or 2000, sorry. And then the peptide works inside cells. You can't get peptides across membranes. Again, data did not matter because we showed that the peptide gets into the cell and affects its effect. And inhibiting protein-protein interaction, that's impossible. Protein-protein interactions are flat surfaces. You can't have a small molecule, in this case peptide, inhibit this interaction. Again, facts did not matter. It's really what the strong opinions that they have. Basically, they say, go away. So having a graduate student who was particularly insistent was particularly important in this case. And his name is Leon Chen. And he kept saying, we have to start a company, we have to start a company. And I actually went around and asked some entrepreneurs at Stanford about starting a company, including Paul, but many others. And they said, well, Daria, there are lots of problems with starting companies. First of all, the kind of work is really not intellectual. Translational research and drug development is kind of, one foot in front of the other. Industry is going to, take what you have in your brain and then spit you out and, just abuse you. And it will ruin your career, and on things like that. And some of those things were made, these arguments were made by people who were entrepreneurs themselves, or who have licensed patents from their labs. But as I said, in this case, the conviction that we have something that may save life was really stronger than all these deterring factors. So after we talked to lots of people, and I'm telling you, lots of people, I had a notebook. I pasted this picture of the heart before and after a heart attack, and I basically will flash it to whoever was willing to look at it, including, most importantly, people who I didn't think are necessarily in this field, but would know who would know. And eventually, we got some people's attention and constantly saying that this is going to save your life. And if you talk to the people at the right age, they know heart disease is really a big looming threat in their own life. So finally, we managed to raise money from VCs. And I have to say, you need to have tremendous amount of tenacity, thick skin, not be affected by any no's. You'll get more no's that you ever got in your life. And at that point, I was a professor here. I was a chairman of the department. I felt, pretty good about what I know. So I thought. And then when you go through this process of pitching to VCs, imagine they want me to crunch all my knowledge into an elevator pitch. In other words, tell me in 2 sentences what you do and why is it important. How dare they? This is somebody who maybe finished undergraduate school, maybe did an MBA, maybe not. Definitely half my age. I think that what it taught me is a great degree of just tenacity, because it's one person that needs to say yes. It's really not the whole world that needs to say yes. And then once you get a first yes, then you can get the next one and the next one. And you have to go in expecting that you will hear yes, but not being devastated by the no. And you also have to listen very carefully to what you're told. Because yes, sometimes it's a young person, but many times it's a very experienced person. And their questions may be very relevant, if not because they are correct questions, but because they will tell you what is the normal things that people worry about when they think about investment. So next time you learn not to say scary things like platform technology. Because I didn't have an inhibitor for one enzyme, I have for many enzymes. And I kept saying, oh, we have a platform technology. You tell me the disease and I can affect it. Bad idea. So finally, we got the investment based on one inhibitor, even though we had 10. And even though we had preclinical works that was done in multiple animal models with these 10 regulators. So learning from those meetings is very, very important. And I have to say, this whole process was also extremely humbling, because you realize that the critical ideas you can get from people who are not necessarily in your field. So for a while, we operated virtually. And finally, we started I took a year off from Stanford and started the company. We moved to the physical space. And now we are in September 2004, which was the end, toward the 9 months of my stay in the company. We actually got a pre-IND meeting before we got fully funded. And this is me sitting next to Kevin Grimes, and behind is the almighty Leon Chen, the graduate student that was in the lab and then was employee number 1 of the company. And I'm sitting down because I can't stand up. Because what I'm doing is pushing the return button on the first clinical site that is enrolling the first patient that is getting this inhibitor. The inhibitors that we designed in the lab 6 years prior to this event. Extremely humbling experience. Extremely scary and awesome, and I can't tell you what other adjective coming through my mind. Because a patient is willing to try something and trust the works that we've done prior to that. It's a commitment that now we, the people who develop the drug, have to have towards these patients, that we've done our darnest to get to this point, and that we will continue to do our darnest to make sure that the data that we learn from this study will actually matter, even if that patient is not going to benefit. And then there are all the nurse coordinators, all the clinical sites, and all the cardiologists, and all the physicians that will follow these patients, all the laboratories, hundreds of people that are willing to put the time to actually develop this drug. So nothing short of being completely humbled by that, and also very feeling very responsible towards these patients. So we did a clinical trial initially in 150 patients, 4 doses, because phase 2A is dose finding. We didn't start with healthy controls because it's not ethical to inject directly to the heart anything to healthy controls. And we delivered it exactly as this pigs got a treatment. And I'm going to now fast forward and tell you that eventually the company was acquired by Amgen, and they abandoned the portfolio because it didn't fit their area of interest. But the good news is that this same inhibitor is going to stroke in clinical trial, hopefully this summer, by another startup. OK, so I was in the company for 1 year. I came back to Stanford, started to think what I'm going to do when I grow up, and not the least of which is I felt that I've learned so much about this process of drug discovery, and how it can't leave me unchanged. Of course, I learned that drug discovery is not intuitive. It's not one foot in front of the other. It's the most creative branch of science. It's really fantastic. It's very intellectual. Also, process so far from perfect, which of course makes me as an academician itch to try to improve on it. And then I felt also strongly that it's time for academicians not to say that this is enough that we wrote our paper and it's published in Science, Nature, or even New England Journal. It's not enough. if it's possible that for individuals it's enough, but we as an institution need to do something so that from that stage it will move forward. So we'll do the right experiments, or we will add to the initial program enough so industry will take the risk of actually developing it further. And we in academia, our ideas are really out of the box, because the way we are rewarded in academia is for doing something that nobody else has done before. If somebody else has done it, we can't publish it, so we don't do that. Which means that industry has not seen it yet. And that's scary, because industry, as you understood by the amount of money that it costs them to develop drugs, are risk averse. So we in academia need to do something to help translate this early discovery to something that looks a little bit more like what industry will take on. And we as inventors need to learn enough about that industry so that when we work with them, we understand what worries them. We understand even the terms that they are using. I mean, talking about translation, huge barrier of terminology and knowledge between these two, between the industry and academia.